Hey guys, welcome back to Planet Victory, and we're looking at some Guild Wars 2 today. I picked this game up a few days ago, and I've been playing it a little bit, and I just wanted to bring you guys my first impressions and reactions about it. Now, I gotta tell you, I'm not a newcomer to Guild Wars. I've been a pretty hardcore Guild Wars 1 fan. I haven't played a lot of the new content, like I haven't played Eye of the North, but about I have 3 accounts for Prophecies, so you can imagine I played the heck out of that when it came out. And what I wanted to do today is kind of a critical review, and probably some unpopular views. I mean, there's Guild Wars 2 has had a lot of good reviews already. They're all over the net. But I wanted to share with you guys some of the things I didn't like about Guild Wars 2, and I had a lot of kind of negative reactions, that surprisingly negative amount of reactions as I first started playing the game, which I'm kind of sad about, so I wish I could have done a better job. Anyways, as I go, you guys can tell me if you think I'm crazy or if you guys agree with me, or let me know. So, okay, what this I don't want to do with this review is I'm not really comparing Guild Wars 2 to WoW, because even with the things that I might not be as happy about with Guild Wars 2, I still think that it's pretty much light years ahead of WoW already, so it's doing a lot more things, things a lot better than WoW. But what I do want to do is basically compare Guild Wars 2 to Guild Wars 1, and um, basically explain my point of view that Guild Wars 1 was a very well designed game, and they had a lot of thought into the game design and how diverging from that, what kind of impacts it has on the game, and because I think it makes some negative impacts. So if I want to boil down basically the differences from 1 to 2, I think there will be 2 major differences, 2 major themes that I'll probably come back to over and over again. And those decisions are to go into a fully shared world. I won't say persistent world, some people might say that, but it's not really persistent. You can't drop anything, everything respawns, so it's not like you affect a change and that's permanent. But a full shared world where you see everybody else that's playing around you is the first most important crux that they basically made. And the second biggest change, is they switched the focus to more of an action-y, combat-oriented game, as opposed to what I thought in the first one was more about an intricate selection of skills and how the skills that you selected interplay with each other. So we'll basically be coming back to those subjects, and a lot of the small differences and the small gripes I have about particular differences come back from those 2 decisions. So for example, very first of all, when I installed the game and started to register, the first screen I'm presented with is World Select. So, right off the bat, I was like, this already feels like a little bit more like mainstream, a little bit more like World of Warcraft. I have to choose a home server where my character is going to live, and if your friends are not on that server, or somebody else you meet plays on a different server, you won't be able to see them or play with them. So in Guild Wars 1, they did not have this concept of home server. You just logged in, and anybody that was on the game, you could message at any point in time, even across the world. Even if they were in a different continent, you could go to the international. There's a drop-down list that they had. You go to international server on the fly, and you can meet up with them that way. So not the same here, and this is from that choice of making that shared world. If you want to make it like WoW, these are the issues you're going to have to deal with. Now, I did realize that there's actually, you can transfer your characters from one server to another, and it looks like you can do it pretty much at any time for no cost. I haven't actually tried it, so I don't know if this cost ever increases or if anything happens there. But this is awesome. If you could do this, that you could actually change whenever you wanted and it was free, then this almost entirely mitigates the downside of having these home servers that you have to basically live on. Now, if you can't do that free of cost or any time, basically what you're introducing, the cost of having this is you have a barrier to play with your friends. You can't play with certain people when you want. So that's basically the first repercussion and that I noticed, that I felt. So let me just go through character creation process, and I'll go through my thoughts as I was building the character for the first time. So I decided to just make a human warrior to be the most basic kind of character that I could think of to figure out what was going on in the game. So very first off, we were presented with which profession would you like to be. And you can see here there's 8 professions, and in this game there's no multi-professioning, there's no dual classing. As opposed to the first one, you had a primary profession and secondary profession. And so right off the bat, you just have a flat list of 8 professions, which to me is basically there's less combinations, so it's less interesting to me. I think the reason why this is it's also an outcropping of having more of a focus on the actiony combat. So they have less of a focus on the combination and unique sets of skills. So to me, that's less interesting, and that's unfortunate. I kind of missed that. Now, instead of having a secondary class, you do have races, and the races are supposed to have an effect on your skills. But I'm still playing early on, so I haven't really come across any racial skills, and from what I have read, the impact of the race is kind of minor. It's not really that important. It doesn't really affect your class that much, so that would be unfortunate. Anyways, we'll still have to see about that one. Okay, so character customization, there's a lot of positive things here. There's a lot of familiar things. Now again, this review that I'm doing as a critical analysis is going to sound kind of one-sided. I'm not going to talk about the positive things, because there's definitely, don't get me wrong, there's lots of great things going on with Guild Wars 2 and lots of positive things, but you guys know and love them and they're already on the net. I just wanted to kind of talk about my possibly unpopular opinions. So these things are cool. I like the presets. What I don't like is when you get down to slider territory. I think sliders are really silly and they don't really help much. The only thing I would be doing with a slider is basically making my character more ugly, because I'm not a beautician. I don't know ratios of noses to eyes to mouths or whatever. So this is really not helping me, and I'm just happy that at least they have, like the first Guild Wars, they have adequate number of presets that pretty much let me customize a good looking character. There's nothing worse than having a developer release a customizer that is just a bunch of sliders and a randomized bar, and that's it. Because, for example, the Bethesda series, I think Oblivion was the first game to come out with something like that, and all you could have is different varieties of ugly people. Like, you couldn't create anything really nice. At least I couldn't. So I'm happy that you can have some good artistically created and chosen presets. Okay, so what else do we have here? Now here's one thing that I got to bring up that is done really well in Guild Wars 2 and I'm really happy about, and that is the coloring, the dyeing system. Now in the first Guild Wars you had a pretty extensive dyeing system. You could color your armor however you wanted, but it was more of an endgame thing. You had to collect the dyes and then you applied them to your armor, and then it was basically permanent. So it was something to do. If you were looking for something to do, it was kind of like a time sink. Then you could go and hunt for these things. But in this game, you can go in and change the color of your armor at any point in time for no cost, no in-game cost, no real money cost, which is great, because what that does to me, that's a philosophy of open experimentation, and I love that. And why I think that's great is, and that's actually why I think Guild Wars 1 was so great, is because the whole game epitomized this concept of open experimentation, just like right against the standards of all these other MMOs, like WoW, where everything cost you money to change or you couldn't undo things, right? Guild Wars basically embraced that for every aspect of their game. Everything was like, go ahead, respec anytime you want, move your attribute points around, move your skills around, and just experiment with the game and find out how you like it best. So I like what they did here with the colors, because that basically upped their game, brought the color thing to the next level by making it more experiment friendly, which I like. But the problem is, this is pretty much the only place I've seen it in Guild Wars 2. Everywhere else, it's taken a step back. Everywhere else, whether it's respecking or swapping your skills around or even moving around the map, is taxed somehow. So that is not conducive of freely trying it and playing with and experimenting. It's trying to shape your behavior to be less open to change and experiment, which I don't like. So I like that they did it for the colors, and I wish they kept doing it for everything else. But in Guild Wars 1, they had pretty much open concept for everything, all your skill points and your skills and your attributes, and that's what I loved. So I do miss that in the second game. So what else do we have here now? We have a background story. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It doesn't affect your gameplay much. It's kind of just the background story is trying to be a little bit unique. I'm happy that the worst case scenario here would be if you chose kind of like this questionnaire and it affected your stats, but in an unclear way. I know if you go back to harping on the Elder Scrolls series, if you go back to as far as Daggerfall, they had a kind of questionnaire like this, and it was like, okay, what did you do as a kid? Did you beat up on a lot of kids, or did you study a lot? And it would change, either your strength or your intelligence, but it wasn't always clear what it was doing. And I think that's the worst because, in my opinion, all games should strive to be as transparent and literal as possible, so that, again, this is a way to facilitate experimenting. You want to know what your action and reaction is so that you can experiment and see what you like the best. If they hide that from you, that's ambiguous, and it's really frustrating. It's the worst. So at least, although I'm not too interested in kind of like the storyline here, and it doesn't affect the gameplay, at least it doesn't get in the way of the gameplay. It doesn't hinder you or obfuscate things. So at least there's that. I'm happy about that. Mostly story is a secondary concern for me. I'm more interested in the gameplay, so I'll just skip through those. But it's definitely here to help hype up your character and feel more immersed in the story. So that's still a good thing, and I'm happy it didn't mess up. Didn't try to do some things like hide what it's doing to your character. So this is the intro screen. It's mostly generic. The same thing is shown for all humans. There's a couple slides that are different based on what background you chose, but again, I don't think it has any effect on the gameplay. Okay, so let's just load up here. Now, as soon as I got into the game, the next big thing that I noticed right off the bat was there's no click to move. There's no mouse move. So this is, once again, just confronted with the reality that this game is going to be completely different from the first one. I mean, I looked around in the settings to just try and turn on my mouse move, but that's not the case. There's no option. So this comes back to that second fundamental difference with this game, which is they put more focus on the combat, and they figured you need precise control for where you move your guy in relation to enemies. And to get that precise control, you need full WASD controls, 4 directions, you need to jump, you need to roll out of the way. So that's cool and all, and a lot of people are going to be happy about that, but it's not without repercussions, not without cost. And for me, the most notable cost or repercussion was that I basically need to dedicate 6 new keys to moving my character around, which takes away 6 keys from what I used to have controlling my skills. And again, I don't think it was accidental with Guild Wars 1. I think they really thought about it thoroughly, and they created a design that worked really well. And they said, you know what, we're going to have 8 skills, which is, a lot of variety can be had with basically a pool of 150 skills per class that you can choose from, and you had 2 classes, any combination of 2 classes, but you have 8 on your bar at any one point in time, and you can control that precisely with one hand. Let's say 4 fingers on 4 buttons. You can have like, 8 skills really close to each other. Meanwhile, you still have full control of your movement with your mouse. So you have your total control of your character is basically what they're doing. But here, we have to use basically an entire hand for movement, and you have even more skills. I think you have a total of about 15 skills that you can control. So, and you don't really want to give up your mouse hand because you need to look around. So it's just that much more cluttered, and I was disappointed because it took me a while to figure out some custom key configuration that I'd be happy with. And I just feel less in control of my character because if you think about it, how many fighting games have like 15, attack buttons, 15 different kind of control buttons? I don't know if there's any really. Like a Street Fighter type of game or whatever. But basically you have full combat movement, and you have to do keep your fingers on about 15 different moves.
Everybody get to the end. We can protect you at the end.
So that was another basically major gripe, and that's a repercussion of just a fundamental design decision that they said, you know what, the movement is really important, but then, it gets really cluttered. Now, I had some other small gripes about it when I first started here with the human warrior and this human starting position. I was a little bit lost. I'm not sure what's going on. The guy greets you over there and he says go to the inn, but if you look around you see these guys cowering over here, so you go talk to them. They're villagers and you try to save them. So you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting, so this is how you interact with guys. But you're really trying to already look at the gravity of the situation, and you're trying to save these guys. But you're like, there's more, and there's more guys. Should I go save them all? Should I leave? I don't know. If you hang out here enough, you realize that all these guys just keep respawning. It doesn't matter if you can fight them, you can try to fight them and attack them, you can save these people, but none of it really matters. And I guess I should have expected that because it's not instant. Everything just respawns. But that just made me feel like my actions actually don't matter. Like, they matter less than what I was expecting. I had the original Guild Wars mindset, if you're in combat, you're in an instance. Guys don't respawn. If you kill a guy, he's dead. So, they only respawn if you change zones or whatever. So you could get a much more crafted experience in my point of view. Also, they didn't explain anything about you're in a combat situation, but they didn't explain anything about your skills. If you hover over here, you can see that they do stuff, but I remember in the first Guild Wars it was very explicit and very well paced, and it was very clear. So I like that. I mean, you can experiment, but there's a difference between being able to experiment, which I think you should be able to do, it's fine, but not having any direction to do so. Basically, if they give you some directions as to what's going on, that facilitates you experimenting, because now you have direction. Okay, so if we just continue with the quest, you go find the next person and you talk to them, and you get this cutscene. So another point about these cutscenes
there are more centaurs on the other side of town.
This is like the original, you had cutscenes, but if you realize in the first one you had like full 3D scenes where your character could even move around and interact with objects on the scene. You can't do that now because you're in this shared world, so you can't have your character acting out across different areas because you might have somebody else already in the area trying to do the same thing. So what they gotta do is kind of black you out and just have this background 2D thing that plays out the cutscene. So what I'm trying to point out there is it's a cost of having this shared world, is that now you got to do a workaround just to get your cutscenes back, and they're not real cutscenes. If you really wanted to have a real cutscene, what you'd be doing is you'd be back at creating a new instance for your character and the NPCs, and they'd interact, so you'd be back at square one. So you're doing these workarounds to get back to where Guild Wars 1 was. Okay, so if I just continue along, I'll try to go to the quest. Let's try to see what else is going on here. Okay, so these are a whole bunch of human players that are already here, and they're participating in the same intro quest, and I'm just going to follow them along. Again, at this point I was still a little bit confused. I wasn't sure what my fighting skills were all about. I would have really liked to know, like, in the first one the pacing was they showed you what a regular attack was, then what a skill was, and you start to piece it together right from the beginning. A simple skill, how is it used effectively and how is it used ineffectively? None of that here. This is just kind of like getting the feel for the game engine, but not really learning anything. So I found that kind of depressing because I'm here doing this thing and I'm not really learning anything about my guys, and then I have all these human players rushing in and all these enemy players. And if you take a look at the scene, this is the typical scene of what happens in-game at all times. You have a bunch of guys rushing onto the screen and a whole like shower of fireworks, and this is relatively calm. You can have sometimes where there's 10 human players and like a whole slew of enemies, and it's just, a field of confusion, which it gets so packed that you can barely make out any of the enemies' name tags or anything. It doesn't give you a really legitimate opportunity to analyze the situation and react to it. It's just kind of, at this point, I'm just trying to get in here and spam my buttons until everybody falls down and finally the mission ends or whatever.
We must all do our part.
So I don't think that's an improvement, right? Not for me. I'd rather have an instance where they can finally craft exactly, they can depend on how many people are going to be showing up for this challenge, and you can really react to the situation. It's just way more unpredictable, and there's no way to really design for it, depending on how many characters there are. Sure, the enemies scale, but it doesn't help what I was talking about, which is it gets so cluttered, it's just a big, everyone's Zerg rushing, and it doesn't seem like you can really use your skills tactically. So here we have this cutscene where big epic stuff is happening, but instead of feeling more engaged and epic and legendary, I actually was already feeling less important, because I could just stand back here and all these guys are going to eventually take care of this creature, this summoned monster, and I have no worries about failing or not succeeding.
Rally to me if you need to recover.
So, yeah, let's see, what else did I have to talk about?
Fight! Fight for everything you hold dear.
I'm not gonna do much here, and I'm just gonna let this thing finish, just to show you guys what I'm talking about. But I guess there were a lot of silly other things that I've seen on the net about Guild Wars. Even Guild Wars themselves, their own marketing. They've said in all, multiple times I've seen them talking about how the Holy Trinity is dead. When they're talking about the Holy Trinity, they're talking about the DPS, healer, and tanking roles that classes have, and they're saying that
Where am I?
they're saying that Guild Wars doesn't have that, and they've got a completely different thing, which is called damage, support, and control. So now, somebody please explain to me how that is completely different, because it sounds completely the exact same. Like, it's just a more generalized synonyms of the exact same thing. So DPS is damage, healing is support, and tanking is control. It's the same thing. So I don't know why they chose to go with that kind of marketing scheme, because it seems really shallow to me. So that's just one other small gripe
Fields
I had.
beyond Shaymore are Kryta's breadbasket. Since the Centaur attack, citizens are trying to rebuild their lives. But it's tough with bandits and dangerous wildlife roaming the area.
So here they're introducing you to kind of like the starter area,
Jump in
like
and
they
help
had
them.
in the first Guild Wars. They had pre-searing that you could basically get used to the game. And they're kind of showing you, they're going to showcase basically the questing system. And the questing system had a lot of, I guess, publicity and hype about it. Some people might have felt that it's like, oh wow, it's going to revolutionize the MMO questing. But if anyone says that, that's just, I call shenanigans on that, because it's really not that different. So what they've done with the questing is, you don't need to go to a quest giver, like a person with an exclamation mark above their head, to get the quests, and you don't need to go back to them once you're done to return the quest and get your loot. Now, if that's all it is what, on the surface, it seems great. That sounds reasonable, you know, it saves me some time going back and forth. But there's other repercussions to this, and I think on, you know, the net change on the whole, it's not really that awesome. It's actually, in some ways, it's kind of annoying. So, okay, sorry, so they don't have exclamation marks now, they have these hearts and stuff. But you notice as soon as I walked into the area, I didn't have to go talk to this person. I just automatically got this quest in the top right, and it gives me a very short summary. It says, you know, help by so now a dynamic event happened and some stuff's going on here, so I can't really explain. But it was saying, like, you know, go and you know, feed the cows or stomp the mounds. But and some reviews would say, like, oh, this is going to be so amazing that you're going to be doing quests without even realizing it. You're going to be making progress. Well, I don't actually think that's that amazing. I think it's actually just kind of confusing. I would like to... so what you miss if you don't have the introduction is you don't have a real sense of what you're doing. You just stumbled across something. So you might be a little bit more confused than before. And second, when they're talking about you don't have to go return the quest, well, you don't get the reward right away. You actually get an email that you have to go open up and then collect the reward and close and delete the email, which to me sounds pretty much exactly like returning a quest. I mean, so you don't have to walk over, but the walking over is not the issue. I mean, if you're right next to them, they're right there. If you have map travel, then you can go and map travel to them. It's not really an issue at all. So I don't think it changes the questing, and it's not going to make questing more fun, that's for sure. If people were annoyed with questing, it's not because of having to talk to somebody. It's because the quests themselves, the tasks, are lame. It's like, if you have to carry 20 buckets of water to, like, put out a fire or something, it's a lame task. That's why it's annoying. And changing this system is not gonna make that any less annoying. So I would instead recommend just don't offer up those kinds of activities if they're not strategically interesting or they don't have interesting decisions in the gameplay. So that's my gripe about questing. What else did I want to talk about here? Holy Trinity, questing.
I didn't see you there.
And yeah, we mentioned a little bit about fast travel and map travel. So here's an odd thing. You had map travel in Guild Wars 1. Now you have map travel as well, but it actually costs money. Now, I'm not sure what the point of that money is, that cost, especially because the cost is so low, it's almost irrelevant. The only thing I can think of is that they have, like, a story tie-in, like they tried to justify how it exists in the world, that it's an Asuran device and you pay a small fee and that'll, you know, pay the cost to run the device, or maybe they make a profit for it. But I don't know why they added that in. If you're going to say it's because of you know, a money sink, money sinks are the dumbest things, I think. I hope it's not because of money sink, because the problems with money sink is it's actually trying to shape behavior. If you had a problem with your players having too much money, it's simple. You just drop less gold. But if you give them a money sink that, you know, using map travel costs money, respecking your skills costs money, you know, respecking your attributes, whatever, you're shaping the behavior, and the behavior in this case is it's less open to experimentation. You can't, you know, what's the difference between somebody that uses map travel every minute and to somebody that never uses it? The person that uses it is penalized monetarily, so it's trying to, like, encourage people to not use it. I don't think that's good. Map travel is great. It's there for a reason. You should use it, and it should be a convenience to let you play the game better, to get to the real parts of the game that you want. So again, it's just some simple, small things that seem innocuous, but they confuse me, and to me it erodes my confidence as to why they made these decisions. I'm starting to think that they didn't really make the decisions, you know, very consciously or with purpose, as opposed to Guild Wars 1, which I was very impressed with. I found every single piece of the game that I looked at, I could find a really important, viable reason as to why that game was programmed that way, and I thought it was very effective. And I guess that's why I'm making this video. I just wanted to get my thoughts across, and I don't hear a lot of these kinds of reasons on the net, so I just wanted to voice my probably unpopular opinion, and I think that the original Guild Wars 1 design doesn't get enough credit, and so I just wanted to make my case of why I liked it and preferred it, and I'm a little bit disappointed with the way that Guild Wars 2 direction that it went. So don't get me wrong though, I still think all you've heard about is me talking about the negatives of this game. I do think it looks like a very fun game, and I've bought it obviously. I want to give it a fair shake, and I want to really experience it, and I think I'm going to be doing more videos about it too. So I do still like the game, but I just wanted to put those my reactions to it out there. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. I think I've been talking enough. If you want to see some more Guild Wars videos, subscribe, and I'll have some up soon. And other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.